What if two countries, thousands of miles apart, could shape the future of an entire region without ever officially declaring war? What if battles were fought, not just with weapons, but with whispers, secrets, and shadows? This is the story of Israel and Iran conflict, not always seen, but always felt. Today, I'd like to take some time to talk about something that's been happening in the world, a long and complicated struggle between two nations, Israel and Iran. You see, many years ago, these two countries had a different kind of relationship. But in 1979, something big happened in Iran. A revolution changed the leadership and with it, how the country looked at the rest of the world, including Israel. From that point on, things began to shift. Iran no longer saw Israel as a friend, but as something very different. As an enemy, but they didn't go to war the way you might imagine. There weren't always tanks rolling or bombs dropping. Instead, much of this war happened in the shadows. Through secret missions, computer viruses, and support for groups that fought on their behalf. These are called proxy groups, and they did a lot of the fighting, often in places like Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza. At the heart of the fear, especially for Israel, is the idea that Iran might build something very dangerous, a nuclear weapon. That fear led to even more tension. People worked in secret to stop each other, sometimes even hurting scientists. Sometimes disrupting whole systems from far away. And yet, in all of this, I often think about the people, not the governments, or the armies, but the mothers and fathers, the children going to school. The neighbors planting flowers, just trying to live a peaceful life. They didn't ask for this struggle, but they live with its weight every day. It's a reminder that in every conflict, there are people who want peace. People who hope that one day their children won't have to hear the sound of war or fear what tomorrow might bring. History is important, but so is kindness. Understanding why people fight can help us understand why peace is so precious. In 1979, Iran experienced a profound transformation that altered its internal structure and foreign policy. The Islamic Revolution, led by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, overthrew the Shah, who had maintained relatively friendly relations with Israel. The new Islamic Republic viewed Israel not just as a political rival, but as a symbol of Western imperialism and oppression in the Middle East. This ideological shift was rooted in a religious prior act and political framework that saw the existence of Israel as unjust and harmful to the Muslim world, especially to Palestinians. Iran immediately severed diplomatic ties with Israel, closed down the Israeli embassy in Tehran, and handed it over to the Palestine Liberation Organization. This marked the beginning of a long-standing enmity. The revolutionary leadership in Iran began to promote a narrative that cast Israel as a usurper state, occupying Islamic lands. This wasn't only about territorial disputes, it was a broader cultural and theological challenge, where Iran aimed to position itself as a leader of the Muslim world and a supporter of the oppressed. Iran's foreign policy became increasingly focused on resistance against Israel. And this theme was carried into speeches, education, and state media. Meanwhile, Israel viewed the rise of an anti-Zionist and revolutionary Iran as a serious strategic threat. Iran's support for militant groups like Hezbollah, which formed in Lebanon in the 1980s, was seen as a direct extension of this ideological war. As a result, what began as a diplomatic severance quickly evolved into a deeper, more entrenched conflict. Over time, this ideological hostility laid the foundation for indirect warfare, with both sides developing long-term strategies to counter each other's influence. This animosity would go on to shape regional politics and alliances for decades to come, and it remains one of the core drivers of the silent but ongoing war between Israel and Iran. The conflict between Israel and Iran has largely unfolded through proxy warfare rather than direct military confrontation. Both nations have chosen to project power and influence by supporting other groups and factions in the region, effectively turning other countries into battlegrounds for their rivalry. Iran has been a key sponsor of Hezbollah in Lebanon since the 1980s, providing the group with weapons, training, and financial aid. Hezbollah has carried out numerous attacks against Israeli forces and civilians, and its presence along Israel's northern border poses a constant threat. Iran also supports Palestinian groups like Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza, which frequently clash with Israel through rocket attacks and militant operations. These groups align ideologically with Iran's resistance narrative against Israel and serve as tools in its regional strategy. In response, Israel has conducted countless airstrikes in Syria and Lebanon, targeting Iranian weapons shipments, military advisors, and infrastructure linked to these proxy groups. Syria, in particular, has become a major stage for this indirect war, as Iran has expanded its military presence there to support the Assad regime. Israel has increased its attacks to prevent Iran from entrenching itself too close to Israeli territory. This tit-for-tat escalation has resulted in a complex web of violence involving multiple actors. Additionally, Israel has strengthened ties with Arab nations like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, who also view Iran as a threat, leading to a broader geopolitical alignment in the region. Both Iran and Israel rely on intelligence operations, cyber attacks, and regional alliances to sustain their proxy strategies. These indirect methods of conflict allow both sides to avoid full war while continuing to undermine each other's strategic goals. The use of proxies not only prolongs the conflict but also increases instability in the countries caught in the middle, such as Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza. Iran's nuclear program has been a central source of tension with Israel since the early 2000s, while Iran insists that its nuclear activities are for peaceful purposes, such as energy production and medical research. Israel remains unconvinced and views the potential for an Iranian nuclear weapon as an existential threat. Israeli leaders across different governments have consistently stated that they will not allow Iran to acquire a nuclear bomb under any circumstances. This concern intensified as Iran expanded its uranium enrichment capabilities, developed advanced centrifuges, and limited international oversight at times. In response, Israel has taken a number of covert and direct actions aimed at delaying or dismantling Iran's nuclear progress. These actions include the assassination of several Iranian nuclear scientists, widely believed to have been carried out by Israeli intelligence. Additionally, cyber operations such as the Stuxnet virus, which targeted Iran's Natanz facility, were reportedly part of joint Israeli-American efforts to sabotage the program. These actions demonstrate the depth of Israel's anxiety and its willingness to act beyond traditional diplomatic means. On the international stage, Israel strongly opposed the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCP, commonly known as the Iran nuclear deal, which temporarily restricted Iran's nuclear activities in exchange for sanctions relief. Israeli officials argued that the deal was flawed and only postponed Iran's path to a bomb, rather than eliminating it. When the United States withdrew from the deal in 2018 under President Trump, Israel welcomed the move and supported the reimposition of sanctions. The collapse of the JCPOA further escalated tensions, with Iran resuming higher levels of uranium enrichment and Israel issuing frequent warnings of potential military action. The nuclear issue remains a focal point in the broader Israeli-Iranian conflict, as both sides continue to navigate a dangerous and uncertain path shaped by suspicion, strategic calculation, and regional power dynamics. The conflict between Israel and Iran has largely played out through covert operations rather than open warfare. These secret actions include cyber attacks, espionage, targeted assassinations, and intelligence gathering, often carried out without public acknowledgement. Israel's intelligence agency, Mossad, is widely believed to have played a major role in operations inside Iran, especially those targeting the country's nuclear program. Several Iranian nuclear scientists have been killed in mysterious circumstances over the years, with Iran blaming Israel for orchestrating the attacks. These operations are designed to slow Iran's nuclear development while avoiding the risks of a full-scale war. One of the most famous covert actions was the Stuxnet cyberattack, discovered in 2010, which damaged Iran's uranium enrichment facility at Natanz. The virus was reportedly a joint Israeli-American creation and marked a turning point in modern cyber warfare, showing that state actors could use software to cause real-world damage to physical infrastructure. Iran, for its part, has also engaged in covert actions. It has targeted Israeli interests abroad, including alleged plots to assassinate Israeli diplomats and civilians in various countries. Iran's Quds Force, an elite unit of the Revolutionary Guard, has been active in planning and supporting such operations. Both nations have invested heavily in cyber capabilities and use cyber tools to disrupt critical infrastructure, leak sensitive information, and send political messages. These covert operations create an atmosphere of constant tension, as each side tries to stay one step ahead without triggering a direct war. The secrecy surrounding these actions makes them difficult to verify, but they have become a core part of the conflict. They allow both countries to pursue strategic goals while maintaining plausible deniability. But they also increase the risk of sudden escalation if any operation crosses a red line or causes significant civilian harm. The rivalry between Israel and Iran is deeply rooted in a broader regional power struggle across the Middle East. Both countries seek to shape the political and security dynamics of the region, but their visions are fundamentally opposed. Iran, as a Shiite-majority Islamic republic, positions itself as the leader of resistance against Western influence and Israeli presence in the Middle East. It supports groups and governments aligned with its ideology, such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Assad regime in Syria, Shia militias in Iraq, and the Houthis in Yemen. Through these alliances, Iran has extended its influence across a crescent-shaped arc from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea, often referred to as the Shia Crescent. Israel views this expansion as a direct threat to its security and regional stability. Israel, on the other hand, has increasingly built diplomatic and security ties with Sunni Arab nations who also view Iran as a destabilizing force. This has led to unprecedented cooperation between Israel and countries like the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia. These alliances have shifted the regional balance, aligning traditional Arab-Israeli adversaries on the same side. Against Iran, Syria has become one of the most visible arenas of this power struggle, where Iran has deployed military personnel and built infrastructure to support Assad and project power near Israeli borders. In response, Israel has launched hundreds of airstrikes to prevent Iran from entrenching itself in Syrian territory. Iraq and Lebanon also serve as proxy battlegrounds where Iran-backed groups operate, prompting Israeli concerns about being surrounded by hostile forces. This contest for dominance is not just military. It's political, religious, and ideological. Both nations use media, diplomacy, military operations, and intelligence efforts to strengthen their positions and weaken the other, creating a lasting state of competition that affects the entire region, while Israel and Iran remain locked in a complex geopolitical and ideological conflict. It is the ordinary people, those far removed from politics and power, who often bear the consequences. Civilians in both nations, as well as in the countries where proxy battles take place, live under the constant strain of uncertainty and fear. In Lebanon, for example, the presence of Hezbollah and the frequent tension with Israel mean that residents often experience blackouts, economic instability, and the looming threat of war. In Syria, the ongoing civil war has been intensified by Iranian support for the Assad regime and Israeli airstrikes on Iranian targets, putting innocent families at risk. In Gaza, Iran-backed militant groups launch rockets into Israel, prompting Israeli retaliatory strikes. This cycle of violence places immense psychological and physical burdens on civilian populations, including children. In Israel, residents in the northern and southern border areas live with the anxiety of sirens, bomb shelters, and missile threats. Iranian civilians, too, face hardships. International sanctions driven by concerns over Iran's nuclear ambitions have weakened the economy, leading to inflation, unemployment, and limited access to medicine and essential goods. Many Iranians do not support the aggressive policies of their government but have little control over its decisions. Despite the hostile rhetoric of their governments, there are people in both countries who long for peace, mutual understanding, and a better future for their children. The human cost of this conflict extends beyond death and destruction. It includes the lost opportunities, the suppressed voices, and the generations growing up under shadows of fear. When leaders engage in shadow wars and regional posturing, the suffering of ordinary people often goes unnoticed, even though it is the most significant and heartbreaking part of the story. The struggle continues, but hope quietly persists among those yearning for stability. In the end, the story of the conflict between Israel and Iran is not just about politics, power, or military strategy. It's about people. It's about how history, ideology, fear, and ambition have shaped a long and painful struggle that continues to affect millions of lives. Through proxy wars, covert operations, nuclear fears, and regional rivalries, both nations have built walls of mistrust that seem hard to break. But behind those walls are human beings, families, children, workers, and dreamers who desire peace, safety, and a future without fear. Understanding this conflict means more than just learning the facts. It means recognizing the human cost and the shared longing for peace that still flickers on both sides. If history teaches us how wars begin, perhaps empathy can help us imagine how peace might one day take its place. ****.